Hi, everybody, and welcome back to FANG Friday. This is Ross Healy, the Chairman of Strategic Analysis Corporation and a Senior Portfolio Manager at McNichol & Associates Asset Management. Well, as it turns out, my timing in introducing you to the SVA valuation of the NASDAQ 100 index itself 2 weeks ago was impeccable. No sooner had the index reached its HB1 price again, 9.5 times adjusted book value, a level that we saw as the likely top, then did the index stall out, turned tail, and started to head south, down almost 10% as of the end of this week. We were confident about this because we had already publicly issued a sell on one of the major constituents, NVIDIA. And of course, all the other FANGs have had a similarly miserable 2 weeks. Last week, I had shown you that 6 of the 7 Magnificent 7 had also reached what we called inflection points, that is to say, critical structural breakpoints. And they, of course, have been set back in the recent market retreat. What is interesting is that, as they say, they don't ring a bell at the top. The market just reversed course and headed down. If you did not have our SVA NASDAQ 100 sell signal, and of course were watching the FANG Friday webcast, you too would have missed the peak. Anyway, after some pretty nasty weakness, including a 3.5% setback on Wednesday, on Thursday the market did try to reverse its trend, and the FANGs, mostly, also tried to rally. But as the day progressed, the NASDAQ kind of slipped back into negative territory again. If today ends up weak as well, I will be very curious to see what the next week will bring, as a lot of investors will be sitting on some startling and unexpected setbacks waiting for the Fed's decision. The first since some interesting developments in the U.S. election. I do need to point out that with a single exception, none of the FANGs has rendered a major sell signal by falling to and then below their next lower breakpoint prices. That does not mean they won't, of course. But so far, the worst that I can say is that this is only a possible normal course correction in an expensive market. However, if the NASDAQ falls to its next lower support level, its bubble price, or 7.4 times book, as it did in 2021, it means that the index will have fallen close to 22%. And no matter how you slice it, that counts as a bear market. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at the FANGs for this week, and let's see if there is any consensus as to a possible or even probable trading rebound. As always, before I do that, I do like to say thanks to everyone who likes this video and all our subscribers. It really helps to grow our channel, and we appreciate it greatly. Okay, well, let's start off with Alphabet. And Alphabet came right up to its bubble price, and not quite, just maybe missed it by 1%, and has inflected down nicely, and actually has been performing quite poorly. I think it's actually done worse than the index. Microsoft, a perfect hit on its HB2, but that was it. And that stock has been setting back nicely as well. How far down could it go? Well, at an extreme, if it gets down to its HB1, of course, that would be a full one breakpoint correction. And, well, that's 22%. So we are cautious about Microsoft, that's for sure. Netflix, like the other two, again, inflecting right off its HB2 and is enjoying, is that the word that I want to use? Suffering, enjoying a nice setback. Finally, or not finally, but Tesla, anyway, roared up to its HB2 and just stopped dead like it was poleaxed, eh? And in the market weakness just yesterday got crunched. So, what do we see from here? Well, you know what I feel about Tesla and the outlook for electric vehicles. I've got a feeling that there's a long way to go before this one is finished. And quite frankly, despite that run-up, I am leaving my sell signal, my sell recommendation on this stock. NVIDIA, well, as you know, I've already called a major sell on that stock. And it has not only declined to its HB7, but actually just a little bit below. And even in today's rally, has been unable to cross its HB7 price. So we may be in for some more fun end games with NVIDIA. Anyway, as you know, I do not like this stock, and I feel and fear much lower prices lie ahead. Apple has been struggling at about its HB6 price. It's kind of let go from there recently, but relative to most of the FANGs, it's actually held up not too badly. Meta is a bit of a conundrum, because in this market weakness, you see Meta fell down to its bubble price, broke below, rallied back up again, and is now falling away. In other words, a typical breakdown, pullback kind of action on the stock. I think I would be kind of running about and shouting and saying, hey, I think you got to bail out of this thing, except, gosh, it did it just recently in April as well. So we've got to watch this stock carefully. But, you know, as we've noted a number of times, the bubble price has been a long-term top for this company. It's tried to break out, but it looks like it's failing. I would be extremely cautious about Meta at this juncture. And finally, Amazon just continues to kind of float along between its bubble price, 7.4 times book, and its HB1, or 9.5 times book. However, even that floating along has not been all that good. Amazon has actually set back a full 10%, or about 1% worse than the overall NASDAQ itself. Support, I think, looms at its bubble price, where we might see a rebound here. Now, to briefly recap what happened last week, and more to the point, why? Well, 2 weeks ago, the NASDAQ 100 had risen back up to its HB1 price, or 9.5 times book value, and was setting back right on cue, in a manner of speaking. The last time that the NASDAQ attained this exalted valuation was at the peak of the market in the late 2021. Back then, it struggled for roughly 3 months, unable to break any higher, before heading down to its lows in late 2022. This time, investors just skipped the topping formalities and just headed south. I'm somewhat curious at the possibility that the NASDAQ may do that again, as every market has its own characteristic topping process. Last week, I did observe that I thought we needed to exercise considerable caution towards the NASDAQ 100, as any setback, notably among the FANGs, could be worse than interesting. Now, last week, NVIDIA, Alphabet, Microsoft, Netflix, Apple, and Tesla, that is 6 of the 8 FANG stocks, had all traded up right to key breakpoints. This week, as we just saw, all have now rolled over, and one of the FANGs, NVIDIA, my one absolute outright sell recommendation, has already fallen a full breakpoint and even a little bit below. So 6 of the FANGs have already corroborated what the NASDAQ 100 was telling us. My question is this a warning of things to come, as occurred the last time the NASDAQ was this high, or just a setback on the way to heavens knows what? As you saw when I showed you the NASDAQ index chart, all those key NASDAQ breakpoints are very powerful indeed, and it will take some extremely powerful fundamentals to allow this index to even to be able to consider to move any higher. Now, one stock, Meta, does look as if it is rendering a sell signal with its breakdown pullback pattern in evidence, although it has done this before, and quite recently. Only Amazon did not have any clear signals to offer us, that's by being up against support or breaking down. Although that has not stopped the shares from declining a full 10% so far, and is actually 1% worse than the decline in the NASDAQ itself. Now, if the FANGs are failing, are there any alternative investments that you could now consider? To answer that in part, it is not only the NASDAQ that you need to follow, but the Standard & Poor's 500 and the TSX as well. Now, I go over all the markets during our regular weekly client webinars. So again, if you are not a client but want to join our investing family, go to www.strategicanalysis.ca/pricing to join today. Of all the times that you will benefit from taking the SVA service, this is likely to be the most urgent and important of all. Now, next week edition of FANG Friday will be subheaded A Tale of Two Markets, and I will be comparing the FANGs at the NASDAQ peak in 2022 with the current peak that the NASDAQ has just achieved just recently, to see if there's any value to be gleaned. Anyway, that's all for this week. And so for now, this has been Ross Healy, the chairman of Strategic Analysis Corporation and a senior portfolio manager at McNichol & Associates Asset Management, reminding you that nothing, including investing, is difficult if you have the right tools. And as you have now experienced at first hand, the SVA valuation of the overall market is a very powerful tool indeed. I'll see you next week.